Hey Curious, can you imagine surviving the Prohibition era, the Great Depression, World War II, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, and the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall, and in fact supposedly predicting the latter by observing the stars? Well, no, we're not talking about Queen Elizabeth, although speaking of British royalty, it is said that the person we're talking about may have read more than the hand of none other than Lady Di. Yes, Curious, that's how fascinating were the 98 years of the life of Jackie Stallone, a woman described as a whole human being full of energy who throughout her almost 100 years on this planet was much more than the mother of the great action hero Sylvester Stallone, since among other many occupations she was a hairdresser, circus trapeze artist, boxer, astrologer. But why not subscribe to our channel, turn on the notifications, and stay with me to learn all about the fascinating life of Mrs. Stallone. This morning, my brothers and I lost our mother, Jackie Stallone. She was the mother to our 4 children, Tommy, Sylvester, Frankie, and my late sister, Tony Ann. She was a remarkable woman, working out every day, full of spunk and fearless. She died in her sleep as she had wished. It was hard not to like her. She was a very eccentric and flamboyant person. She was born on November 29th of 1921 in Washington, D.C. She lived throughout Prohibition, the Depression, and World War II. I would talk to her for hours about the 20s and 30s and 40s. It was a history lesson. These were just some of the moving words with which Frank Stallone announced to his followers on Instagram that his mother had passed away. And he said it himself, having been born at the beginning of the second decade of the 19th century. Jackie Labofish was a woman with countless stories to tell, starting with her complicated childhood, as her parents were obsessed with sport. Her father John, a lawyer by training, and a trainer with none other than Charles Atlas, who is considered one of the fathers of bodybuilding. Labofish was immersed in bodybuilding that they even had a gym in the basement of their own house and forced Jackie to come down and train every morning. That's why, as a 12-year-old, she already had huge muscles, which kept her fellow classmates at a distance. Her loneliness and the weariness of her overworked parents drove her out of the house when she was just 16 years old. That is when she joined the Ringling Brothers Circus to work as a trapeze artist. Her long career in show business had just begun. Years later, taking advantage of the muscles she had developed thanks to the hard training her father imposed on her, Jackie began her journey as a professional wrestler. Already having all the confidence in the world and had given her the ability to defend herself, she began to work as a cigarette seller at the Stork Club in Manhattan, a semi-small candlestein bar where only the greatest artists would meet, such as Ernest Hemingway, baseball player and ex-husband of one of the only Marilyn Monroe, Joe DiMaggio, but it was also attended by the Kennedys and some members of the Italian mafia, so Jackie was thrown into the mix of the best and the worst. And since we're on the topic of Italians, in 1945, the reckless and multifaceted Jackie married the barber Frank Stallone, and a year later in 1946, they welcomed their firstborn son, Sylvester, and soon after, little Frank Jr. would join the family. During those years, Jackie decided to leave the rings and bars for a while and instead picked up a pair of scissors and to do the same job as her husband. However, as often happens, she was not able to avoid having history repeat itself, and soon she did with her children the exact thing that her parents did with her and began to put them through a hard workout regime. Though at the time it was a total bummer for little Sylvester, but as we all know very well, many years later he would end up thanking his mother for it. By 1954, Jackie realized that the one thing that she hated so much during her childhood had become her greatest passion, and so she decided to open the city's first women-only gym, which she called Barbellas, a play on words that fused her occupation as a barber and the word beautiful in Italian. Some years later in 1959, she married for the second time, only this time she married a businessman, also of Italian origin, called Anthony Fillitti, with whom she had her now deceased daughter and the actress Tony D'Alto. Jackie didn't settle for being a pioneer in women's gyms. She also became the first woman to have her TV show dedicated to women's weightlifting. She once gave an interview to Sports Climax magazine in which she stated, "I was always wearing my boxing gloves while other girls were worried about looking good. For me, that was the only lifestyle that came naturally to me." So since we are talking about the GLOW program, first broadcast in the United States in 1986, and whose acronym stands for Glamorous Ladies of Wrestling, the production took place in the city of Las Vegas and was about fights between attractive wrestlers, some belonging to the group of bad girls and the other to the team of good ones. By the way, in 2017, a series with the same name was released on Netflix, and although it was not as successful as the original program, for the fans of the old production, it was wonderful to relive the old memories. And And the same can't be said for Sylvester, because according to what Jackie herself once said, her son did not like the fact that his mother was in a program like that, because it was not what a married woman with children was supposed to have been doing. Oops, and that is still nothing compared to what she would do sometime later, curious? And if we talk about embarrassing moments starring his mother in which the actor probably wanted nothing more than the top to be swallowed into the ground, just remember that time in 1992 when Jackie was invited to appear on the show of the quite controversial Howard Stern. It turns out that in the middle of the interview, her ex-husband Frank made an appearance via a live call. Well, you might be asking, so what? The presenter told his guest that her ex-husband was dating a 19-year-old girl, to which Mrs. Stallone responded that even at 28, she couldn't get him to do anything, and that he was abusive and a lousy, disobedient father, and several other compliments. One can only imagine what would have happened had he had been there in person. Then, in the mid-90s, Sylvester's mother decided to enter the field of astrology because, according to what she published on her official website, when she was little, a medium who was a friend of her father told her when she grew up she would become an astrologer, guide of kings, presidents, movie stars, sportsmen, gangster, policemen, and even priests. In fact, according to Jackie herself, among other things, she predicted the fall of the Berlin Wall and the verdict of the century's trial against the Kardashians' close friend O.J. Simpson. Oh, and of course, I can't forget to mention that according to her, she was also a guiding astrologer and an advisor to none other than Lady Di herself. And as if these endeavors were not enough for Sylvester and his siblings, Mrs. Jackie decided to venture into the field of rompology. What? Don't worry, I was just as confused as you are. According to what she assured people, it was an ancestral practice from ancient Babylon that consists of reading the lines in the folds of, now listen carefully, the buttocks. According to what you can read on her website, the left cheek reveals the person's past, while the right cheek shows what will happen in the future. So, is anyone interested? Well, for obvious reasons, it will no longer be possible to have our behinds read, at least not by Sylvester's mother. However, an interesting fact is that for some time now, perhaps because of COVID-19, Jackie has been offering her rompological services at a distance. All she asked for was a picture of the behind, and for $600, she would do a complete reading. Now, if your budget was not big enough, or maybe you were only interested in the past or the future, you could have sent a picture of the left or right cheek separately to read for the minimum amount of $300. For all the above reasons, we are not surprised that Jackie has been parodied in comedy programs on countless occasions. Besides, she herself assured more than once that as she got older, she became more popular. And if there is any doubt about that, in 2005, she was selected to be part of the celebrity Big Brother house, where she starred at home with her former daughter-in-law, actress Bridget Nielsen, with whom her son Sylvester was married for a couple of years, from 1985 to 1987. However, she only did so for 4 days, as Miss Stallone was the first to be nominated by her peers and later expelled from the house. And now, while we're on the subject of her former daughter-in-law, she dedicated a few words of farewell to her on her Instagram account. What Nielsen wrote to accompany the image she published, which showed next to Jackie, and was the following: "Extremely strong, full of energy, and very unique woman, under so many aspects till the very end. Emotions are running through me all because now you're gone and I didn't get to say goodbye. You'll surely be missed. Rest in peace, dear Jackie." Although Mrs. Stallone once said that she was sure her children were ashamed of her because they thought their mother should be doing other things, she was also absolutely right when she said that if she hadn't been doing that kind of thing, they would be complete strangers today and would not be making movies in Hollywood. And thus, the American entertainment world says goodbye to one of the most fascinating, controversial, parodied, but at the same time most loved by many celebrities. We at Curious Tips can only join in that farewell and wish her family and loved ones all the best. And so, my curious friends, were you aware about the things that Jackie Stallone accomplished in her life? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video.